still got a few more things I want to say about the enhanced phase before we move over to perturbation, okay? Now, one of the things is, as I said before, negotiation is about what we agree upon, okay? One of the first things we both agree upon is to get together and to actually sit down and meet and talk to each other, to agree, to disagree agreeably, as Dr. Stephen Covey puts it. Okay, so we agree to sit across the table and to talk to each other, and that can take. I talk about the Israel-Palestine situation, Ariel Sharon, and what's his name again?
Arafat.
Mr. Arafat. Sorry, I always forget his name. Mr. Arafat. The pair of them, those two men hated each other so much they couldn't be in the same room together, and so there was no possibility of coming to any kind of negotiated settlement or agreement while they were both in power. Okay, now they're both gone, and now there is a chance that the negotiators for that situation will come together. And the first things they will do when they sit together is the Israelis will say, why are you here? And the Palestinians will say, we want to be able to conduct our normal lives again. We want the walls to come down, we want to get our land back, and we want our children not to be killed as collateral damage in Israeli airstrikes. Okay? And the Israelis, and then the Israelis will say, well, we're here because we don't want our children to go out on a Saturday night to a discotheque and get blown to pieces by a suicide bomber. You know what I mean? So we both agree. Do we both agree? We both want that to stop. Okay? So the first thing that we agree upon is we both want that to stop. So, and we're here now to try and figure out a way to make that happen. Okay? So it's long-term win-win. Eh? That's what we're here for. Okay? You can apply the same logic to business. You want a particular thing for a deal, we want a particular thing. So identifying what people want is part of the first base agreement. Let's digress a little bit more, because there's more, we can get more information before a negotiation around this particular kind of idea. I think it took 2 years for President Nixon's negotiators to bring the Vietnam War to a kind of conclusion. And one of the things that was interesting, it took 2 years for the Americans to persuade the Vietnamese to come and sit at the table and start to negotiate. Okay, so that's first base. And I read somewhere in The Economist, I think, one of the things that was on the agenda was the shape of the table. It was the location, where it's going to be, so the place was part of it, but also even the way people were going to sit. And what the Vietnamese wanted, so the Vietnamese wanted to meet in Paris, and they wanted that shape of table. Now that's really interesting, I think. The furniture, or the layout of the space, actually gives you extra information. So I'm a consultant sometimes, apart from being a lecturer. I make my product in my client's office. So I create my product in his office. Okay. You are a consultant. You've arrived as a consultant when you feel comfortable in another person's boardroom. That's what they say. So that's where you work. That's where I make my product. Now, the layout of the actual kind of the way they do things in their business or in their office or on their premises gives you a lot of information. Let me give you an example. An old British Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan, had to negotiate with the French in the 70s. Macmillan wrote in his memoirs, as soon as I walked into, it was in Paris, as soon as I walked into the room that the French had chosen, I knew we were in for a fight. And the French had chosen they'd chosen a room in one of their palaces, a a long room with a long table, and all the way down the table were flags, French flags, you know, the little things they have. Sure, you've seen them. And on the other side were British flags. So each person had a flag. And of course the prime ministers, or the power people, started in the centre and kind of got less powerful as you went down the ranks. Okay, so it was very hierarchical. But Macmillan said, as soon as I walked into that room, he said, I knew we were in for a fight, because he saw this, that they were lined up facing each other. Okay, and he also said, and of course, in the room they'd chosen, all around the walls were these great oil paintings of French battle victories. You know, so in other words, the French, mostly over the British actually, Napoleon. The French had chosen a war room in order to be the room where they were going to meet and do the negotiation. Okay, so they'd chosen a war room. So Macmillan, it tells you a lot. Let me tell you about furniture, okay? Because this you won't find in a book. This is to do with, I call it space, okay? So enhance also is a kind of an aspect of space. When we have we had a family dinner last week. We had a family dinner last week, right? My family are all Flemish. Some of them speak English, but most of them are not very comfortable with English. When we have a family dinner, I always sit here. So I try to be the first one to sit down. And I will sit down first, and then whoever wants to speak English that night, they're free to sit wherever they like. Anybody who wants to speak English, that's the English zone. So I don't force myself on a group of people where they have to speak English. You know, I go first and sit down, and then whoever comes and sits down around me is there because they want to sit next to me and speak English. Okay, first rule. Second thing is, if you are in a negotiation, sit down first. Whoever sits opposite you has got something for you. Anybody who sits facing you has got something for you. You know, like if you go to dinner with your girlfriend or with your girlfriend will not allow you to sit that way. My wife won't, okay? My wife wants to sit there. People who love you or people who hate you will sit and face off you. So what you should do is sit down first. And then if it's team against team, see who sits opposite you. If someone sits opposite you, facing you, they've got something for you. When I teach my MBA classes, my big MBA classes, not like this one, where I've only got 3 students in this group, okay? But when I've got a lot of students, I arrange the furniture in a U shape. And that's me. I'm very interested in who sits there. Not particularly interested in who sits there, but I get to know the names of the people who sit there. Not the first week. Second week, they will have all changed. They'll have all moved positions. Round about the third week, the group will have settled down, and then I want to know the names of the people. Well, I know the names of the people who sit there. People who sit directly opposite me either love what I've got to say or they hate what I've got to say. You know, it's people who wish to challenge the ideas or whatever, or people who tend to agree. So people who've got strong feelings for each other tend to sit facing each other. Okay, remember that.